Hello and welcome to today's episode. I am Leah and I'm here with Marit as
Hello.
we dive into today's topic. So today's topic, we're going to essentially be talking about the importance of eating veggies and fruits and the importance of consuming those with the impact on brain health. And from that, we are just going to be looking at this one new manuscript that was been published in Nutrient earlier this year, titled The Impact of Polyphenol-Rich Nutraceuticals on Cognitive Function and Neuroprotective Biomarkers.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
So to kind of break down, what is it? Polyphenols. How do you pronounce it? Polyphenols. They are plant compounds that you can find in berries, teas, dark chocolate, and they are getting a lot of buzz for their potential brain benefits. This study looks to see if the science can back up the claims made about polyphenol-rich supplements. They tested this in a double-blind and placebo-controlled clinical trial.
Yeah, so we're just gonna go through a little bit of background on kind of like what polyphenols are, how it was set up, and then talk a little bit about what they find and what this might mean for your daily habits and for your everyday life. And of course, along the way, we're going to share our own thoughts on this, but we do want to break down the science of this manuscript.
Yeah, my first own thought is that words are too difficult to pronounce.
Science.
It is science. But we're going to start talking about what are polyphenols, why did they use that word? But essentially, they are bioactive compounds that you can find in fruits, vegetables, teas, as I said, dark chocolate, but also even wine. They are known for their antioxidant properties. However, recent research suggests they might also help protect the brain, particularly by influencing proteins like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and C-AMP response element binding protein, CREB.
Yes, so those seem like a mouthful. So just break it down. These two proteins, they're just proteins in the body, and they're crucial for learning, memory, and overall brain plasticity. So just think of it in that way. It's just there are two important proteins that are commonly found in the brain, and they are important to have optimal levels to keep your learning and your memory and just your overall brain health at a good level. Having these at an optimal level will help your brain adapt and form new connections and protect itself from stress. And everyone in today's world is stressed, so we want to keep that from taking over our brain.
Yeah. And there is evidence that shows that oxidative stress can disrupt these proteins, and that the polyphenols, with their antioxidant effects, might help keep pathways running smoothly. Now, oxidative stress is an imbalance in the body where there are too many free radicals, reactive oxygen species, and not enough antioxidant to neutralize them. So when you have these polyphenols, the compounds found in fruits, vegetables, and wine and chocolate, dark chocolate, if you add that into the diet, then it might help leveling out that stress.
Yes, and oxidative stress is like a really big thing. In the last several years, this whole thing about chronic inflammation has become a really big thing for various reasons, and understanding especially chronic oxidative stress, and the negative impacts on this. And they're starting to see that these antioxidants have combative properties against this oxidative stress. So the big question is, for this manuscript, the question is, can taking a polyphenol-rich supplement actually improve cognitive function and boost these neuroprotective markers, those two proteins that we talked about earlier, in healthy adults?
Yeah. And how was this tested? The researchers ran a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover trial. That is also a mouthful. Basically, the gold standard for clinical research. They had 92 healthy adults, and the average age was 34. And something to point out before we even go into this study is pretty big because oftentimes brain function studies are done on older adults where they test cognitive kind of lacking as people get older. So having an average age of 34 is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's also important to understand that in this manuscript, in this study, they looked at a younger average age, but they also looked at people of all 92 of these healthy adults who are low consumers of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Low consuming meaning less than the recommended average intake, which is 3 servings a day. So all these 92 healthy adults were consuming less than the recommended intake of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. Also, they used a crossover design, which means that everyone serves as their own control, which helps account for individual differences. Because oftentimes you see you have a testing group and a control group. But in this clinical trial, they were both the control and the testing group. So that means that the individual differences are kind of canceled out because you're looking at the people individually. They then took either a polyphenol-rich supplement, specifically Juice Plus Premium, which is a blend of fruit, vegetable, and berry juice powders, or they took a placebo.
Yeah, and so each phase, so as we mentioned, it was a crossover. So they were put into one group that lasted 16 weeks, and then they went 4 weeks of no supplementation, and then they switched to whatever supplement they hadn't taken already for the last 16 weeks. So it's quite a long study.
Yeah.
What is that, 36 weeks?
Yeah, 36 weeks.
That's pretty long for human research. Like, that's a pretty long trial. So
and especially if you have all the participants participate the whole 36 weeks, because that's very long to keep people motivated.
Yeah, so as Mart mentioned earlier, the supplement itself came from the brand Juice Plus Premium. It's just the company that they use for supplementation. But this supplement cocktail contained apples, carrots, grapes, pomegranates, berries, greens, and more. And they reported that it contained over 119 different polyphenolic compounds, which all have their own names, and we don't have to get into that. But polyphenol is like a family of different compounds. So it had a very vast variety of these compounds. And they were supplementing through a capsule form. So this little powder was put in a capsule and they would take it every day.
6 capsules, I believe.
Yes.
That's a lot of capsules that one has to take. They then tested cognitive function. They used the Stroop test, the trail-making test, and the Reynolds intellectual screening test. The Stroop test is a test for attention and inhibitory control. The trail-making test is for processing speed and flexibility. And the Reynolds Intellectual Screening Test is for general cognitive ability. Additionally, they measured blood levels of the two proteins that we mentioned before. And they did this in both groups. So the placebo group, and then later on again in the supplement group, or vice versa, starting in the supplement group and then going to the placebo group.
Yes. So overall, this was a very well-controlled study. They were very thorough in excluding any kind of confounding factors such as chronic illness, special diets, smoking. They only wanted to look at low consumers of fruit and veggies, so high consumers were outside of the criteria. And in addition, each person served as their own control in this experiment, which also strengthens the power of the manuscript or of the study.
Yeah, I do think having a being your own control is kind of like a good way to study it, because then you're not just comparing groups, but you're comparing individuals to different exposures, basically.
Yeah.
It gets interesting though, because compared to the placebo, polyphenol-rich supplement significantly improved cognitive performance. That's pretty big. They showed, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say the participants, they scored higher on the Stroop test and the RSIT. That's the Reynolds Intelligent Test, which means better attention and better general cognitive ability. The trail-making test, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's very interesting that these two specifically improved so much, because we in today's society have such a low attention span.
Yes.
And, that's always, phones or this, that, or the other. And it's kind of interesting to see, like, well, maybe diet also plays into our attention span.
Because I think diet has not been, has not gotten any better since the last couple of years.
Oh, probably more than that.
It probably gotten worse, and people are probably eating not as good because they're always busy and they're always trying to rush, so they don't take the time to take care of themselves in the same way that they might have in the past. It does also show that the trail making test improved as well. However, the paper highlights the strongest effect in attention and overall cognition.
Yeah. So not only did these objective cognitive tests improve, but the blood levels of both these proteins were significantly higher after taking the supplement compared to the group compared to this placebo section. Which is a huge deal, since these proteins, as we know, are directly involved with brain health and plasticity.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that not only did people perform better on the cognitive tasks, but their blood even showed more of these neuroprotective markers, which I think suggests that the supplement was doing something at a biological level, not just giving a placebo boost to the brain cognition. Because you see that sometimes too, right? Where the placebo effect is like people believe like, okay, I have taken these supplements, they should help with my cognitive ability, so then they perform better on a task. That's not the case, because they actually improved in the blood levels, which is not something that really that placebo effect can achieve.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's such a good point to point out, because the placebo effect is such a real thing, especially psychologically, it's such a real thing. But to combat that with having objective blood variables that they're looking at, which were these proteins, And to see such an increase in those two, I think kind of strengthens the whole argument for this study.
I agree. It definitely gives you more believability, kind of.
Yeah.
Where it's not as much where you can argue like, oh, but was it just like people's thinking? No, it's biologically.
How much of this is by chance, or how much of it like was actually like a change? Like, I think having that physiological aspect is very important.
Especially because you have a group of 94 people, which in human subjects it's a lot, and then in that 94 you see a significant increase. That's really good. That's very strong.
Yeah. So at the end or throughout this manuscript, the author suggested that these effects are likely due to the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties of these polyphenols, which these properties help reduce that oxidative stress that we talked about earlier and support molecular pathways involved in learning and memory, which just basically means it helps reduce the stress in the brain and the inflammation in the brain and support that signaling pathways that are in the brain and just kind of like helping with its connectivity.
The authors also noted that the supplement was well tolerated and adherence was high. This basically means that people kept taking it. So it's not that they took a week off and were like, oh shit, I forgot to take the supplement. They were keeping consistent with taking the supplement and taking the placebo, which also is another, I think, strength of this paper.
Yeah.
They also did not report any major adverse events.
Yeah, and that just means no one had any kind of major side effects from it. No one really reported anything out of the ordinary, such as, allergic reactions or shortness of breath, like any kind of major side effect. So that's also good to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for all of us or for all of you? So this means that there is the potential that a polyphenol-rich nutraceutical, which is just a supplement in food form, can boost cognitive performance and increase that neuroprotective biomarkers, even in already healthy and relatively young adults.
And as I said, that is pretty exciting that this study was done on young adults, because most studies focus on older adults, especially when it comes to cognitive decline. You often tend to see older people involved. But here we see benefits in a healthy population. It makes you wonder about the potential benefits for us increasing our polyphenol in our diet, but also about prevention of cognitive decline.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, this is a supplement study. We are not recommending that you rush out to the store and buy a bunch of supplements. And the main reason for this is because these participants were low consumers of fruits and vegetables. Remember, they did not meet the minimum requirements of 3 servings per day of fruits and vegetables. However, it does mean if you're someone who does not particularly like to eat fruits and vegetables and a variety of fruits and vegetables, start incorporating them in your everyday diet. Incorporate those whole foods, incorporate a fruit and a vegetable at every meal or as a snack, just because there are these benefits that you can get from eating whole foods.
Yeah, and that being said, it is possible that people who do meet the requirements don't see this difference or the effects when taking a supplement, because if you already have a diet that is rich in the polyphenols and the fruits and the veggies and everything, then taking these supplements might just be for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no point on wasting money and to take something that you don't necessarily need. And while a supplement is convenient, especially if you're someone who is low in daily intake of fruits and vegetables. A supplement is convenient. However, it's again very important to point out that a diverse intake of fruits and vegetables, so a spectrum, consuming a spectrum of vegetables and consuming a spectrum of different fruits, offer a wide variety of these polyphenol compounds and other nutrients that the capsule cannot necessarily give you. And that keeps supporting the argument that eating that whole food diet, eating adequate amounts of vegetables and adequate amounts of fruit is so critically important.
Yeah, I think you summarized that perfectly. What are your thoughts on this study?
I think it's very enlightening. I'm someone that does believe that like food, nutrition as medicine, and in today's world right now, most people aren't getting adequate amounts of the different food types, and I think that just goes to show. Like if you can find 94 people that are low consumers of food, of vegetables and fruits, and otherwise healthy, like that's not really a good thing.
No, but compared to a whole population, 94 is nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think it just speaks to where we're at, where we are struggling with our food consumption and type of food consumption. And it's starting to show, like, look, some of these things, like cognitive decline or our attention spans, may have some impact or may be impacted by our food and our nutrition just as much as some other outside factors that we've been blaming on, such as the phone, the computer, TikTok, like, these like different social medias. I think it's just interesting.
Yeah. And I had another thought, but my brain today is not really working properly. I guess I haven't eaten my fruits and vegetables today. No, but when it comes to these diets, I don't know if people nowadays are in an economic place to have the whole food diet.
Yeah, see, that's been a topic conversation in our lab. In some countries, that's definitely the case, but in like modern Western countries, fast food's expensive nowadays. Like you go to McDonald's, you spend $15+ now. It's not the $3 thing anymore. Like, so to me, I think, as my opinion, and as we've discussed this as a lab, it's not. Yes, there is an economic part to it. Not going to completely say there's not.
Yeah.
But it's slowly evolving to a convenience versus non-convenient. Not a this is cheap, this is more expensive. It's a convenience thing now.
Yeah. No, it's true. Because people are busy after work, they're tired. I mean, I know it for myself too. Like after work, you want to preferably just sit down and eat and do whatever the rest of the night. And then to have to make food, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes more energy. But I was even talking to one of my clients today, and he is facing the same issue, and he has a lot of those prepackaged meals from the store. They have too many additives to be healthy, right? And I said, every now and then, sure, it's okay. But on a regular basis, preparing your own food, cutting your own vegetables is better for you. And even if you take the time on one day and make a big batch of food and then use it for more meals, is better than to buy and eat those prepackaged meals.
Yeah, for sure. And they're not cheap either. They're not cheap either. And I think that's kind of like the dynamic that we have, at least in, I'm not going to say all, like Western countries, like developed countries, like we have treated food and nutrition as like, oh, I'm going to eat whatever is convenient, not what I
Yeah.
actually need to be healthy. And I think that's kind of the dynamic that we're moving towards. And I think that's kind of the struggle that we're having to face as a society of like, you can't get healthy whole foods as conveniently as you can, like packaged foods, microwavable
True.
foods, etc., etc.
True.
It's just real having to relearn why nutrition is so important.
Yeah, exactly. Because what you're saying there, I think is important. I feel like a lot of people, um, nutrition is not something you get in every basic education. You have to go out of your way to know what products are good for you and what not. I feel like nutrition should be a basic like course within education.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know why it's not.
Because
But
we need to learn
that's a
about
completely
history and
different.
geography and
Yeah, it's
math.
a completely like segment. But
No, it
yeah,
is, but I do think it plays a part because if people really realize, like, oh, this is what products do to my body and my way of living the next couple of years, they might make very different choices.
oh, 100%. Um, yeah, so we're kind of gonna wrap up today's episode. So we want to thank this wonderful lab out of Spain, I think they were,
Yeah.
um, for this very informative study that they have published. And just to wrap up some conclusions that we gathered from this manuscript, the polyphenol-rich supplements or just adequate amounts of fruits and veggies in your diet improved cognitive test scores and also boosted neuroprotective proteins in healthy adults. The effects are likely due to the reducing of oxidative stress and enhancing the neuroprotective signaling of the brain. Let us know your thoughts. We are curious on, do you consume enough fruits and veggies? And if not, what are some ways that you have started incorporating them into your everyday diet?
Yeah, let us know. And see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.